As I'm making sure that my phone ringer is off, because apparently it's registered, please make sure that you have all silenced your phones.
Okay, all set? Good evening. Call the July 12th, 2022 Murrysville Planning Commission meeting to order. Will you please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Patty, please call the roll.
Mr. Lemke?
Here.
Ms. Hoy?
Here.
Mr. Midal?
Here.
Mr. Patrick? Mr. Olszewski? Mr. Kearns?
Here.
Mr. Levecki?
We have minutes from June 14th. Is there any comments or corrections to the minutes?
I read them and I have no comments, and I recommend we approve them.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Patty, let the record show that Mr. Siddick is also representing the Planning Commission tonight as learned counsel. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a public hearing concerning CU 422, the Hermes gas well development, a proposed unconventional oil and gas well. This is at tax parcel 4902-00-0-001. This is the early mailing address is 5476 Logan's Ferry Road. It's in the RR zone and in the oil and gas overlay district. This is out actually right on the border of with Plumboro. Gas well people, do you have anything you wish to present?
Good evening again. My name is Blaine Lucas. I'm with the law firm of Baps Cowan, outside counsel to Olympus Energy, the applicant before you tonight. As you've noted, this is the conditional use hearing on Olympus's application for what's called the Hermes well pad. We've also filed a land development application, which isn't directly the subject of the hearing tonight, but they're kind of interwoven. So the information we presented, a lot of it will relate to both. As the chair has noted, oil and gas drilling is authorized as a conditional use in the oil and gas overlay district in which this property is located. Olympus initially intends to drill 8 wells over a course of 2 trips. Possible additional wells would be in the future. Those would be, we would come back for further consideration of those. To the extent applicable, Olympus has also applied and is requesting a conditional use for a major excavation. And that's how these have been handled in the past. Tonight we have a large number of people here. Not necessarily all of them are going to speak unless the commission has questions. Our primary presenters are going to be Ryan Daly, who you've met before. He's a project engineer with CEC. Joe Gooley, next to him, is our traffic consultant with Stahl Schaefer Engineering. And Tage Rosendahl, gentleman with the sunglasses, is with acoustical control and did the sound impact assessment for this project. We have a number, several other individuals here tonight that if the board, if the commission has questions for them, we would make them available.
Let me interrupt you here. Mr. Lemke, would you swear in all those who are about to give testimony tonight on this, as well as any member of the audience that may want to speak on this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody raise your right hand. In the testimony you're about to give tonight, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
In a moment, we're going to have Mr. Daly undertake his presentation, which is actually similar to the one that we gave you a preview of last month. Several other individuals are here if you do have questions. Manny Johnson is Olympus's Vice President of Operations. Next to him is Brian Dilmuth, who is a regulatory advisor. Mark Maestra with...
I'm sorry, Mark what?
Maestra, M-A-E-S-T-R-A. With the communications. Behind him, Kim Price, who's the Director of Communications. And then in the way back, we have Tom Walsh, who was it was CEC, who prepared the hydro study that was submitted with the application. And next to him, Leah Blinn, also with CEC, who prepared the air study. So we're not necessarily going to call all these individuals, but if the board does, if the commission does have questions, they're here to answer them. So with that, I'm ready to turn it over to Ryan.
And before we have that, I heard a cell phone, so please silence your cell phone. And each person who gets up to speak, if you could please spell your first and last name for the record.
It's Ryan, R-Y-A-N, Dailey, D-A-I-L-E-Y. Project manager with Civil and Environmental Consultants. As Blaine mentioned, I'm going to walk you through the site overview and give a similar presentation as what we did last month. If I could get the overhead, there we go. So to orient you with this site, Route 286 cuts up through the bottom right-hand corner of this sheet. Route 386 or Route 380 comes down from the north and then heads across into Plum. So if you're familiar with that interchange, just to the west of that would be the intersection with Logan Ferry. And Logan Ferry Road runs north-south on this plan. So the property that we're proposing to develop on is the Mills property, located in the RR district and the oil and gas overlay district. It's approximately 147 acres total. It is split between Murrysville and Plum. So the county line and municipal boundary runs north-south through this sheet. And you'll note that the well pad is entirely on the Murrysville side of that line. Last thing I would note as far as the property is concerned, Olympus does have a surface use agreement in place with this property owner. While I'm on this sheet, I'll talk about some setback requirements. So the Murrysville ordinance requires the nearest portion of the outer boundary of the proposed well pad be located more than 750 feet from a protected structure. This site complies with that simply because Olympus got setback waivers signed from the property owners to the east of this site. So the next closest properties off to the south, north, and northeast are farther than 750 feet from the well pad. In particular, the closest protected structure is located approximately 1,200 feet up to the northeast of the pad. So this would be in that area. Additionally, just some other distances as we go around the site. The nearest structure to the west is approximately 2,100 feet away. To the southwest, these residences on the Plum side are approximately 1,500 feet away. Again, directly to the east, these are approximately 1,400 feet away. And then up to the north, we're over 1,800 feet away from the well pad. The other ordinance requirement for setbacks is that all temporary and permanent structures, equipment, and materials must be located more than 350 feet from a protected structure, and that would include the access road. We do comply with that setback for this site. And then lastly, there is a requirement for a 300 feet setback from recreational areas. There are no recreational areas in close proximity to this site. So these next maps I'm pulling up are the proposed haul routes. We have 2 haul routes to present tonight. And Mr. Gooley from Stahl Schaefer will be able to provide more detail on the routes and the truck counts. But just to give you an overview to orient yourself with the site, the proposed haul route we have coming from the east and the north on State Route 380 would come down 380 and make the right to continue on 380. Again, make another right onto Logan Ferry and then into the site. Vehicles exiting the site would come back out Logan Ferry, go straight through the 4-way intersection, back out to Route 286, and then make the left to head back to the north. The second map I have here shows a route coming from the south along Route 286. So trucks coming from Route 22 would travel north on 286, again up to that same intersection with Route 380, make the left onto 380, and then a right onto Logan Ferry up to the site. Vehicles exiting the site coming back down 286 would follow the same route out. So the plan I have in front of me now is a close-up of the proposed site design and site grading. So I'm just going to walk you through some more details on the site layout. So starting at the entrance, the access road entrance, again, this comes off of Logan Ferry Road. The first 50 feet would be paved asphalt in accordance with the Murrysville requirements. The remainder of the access road would be gravel cover. The access road itself will be 24 feet wide and approximately 1,300 feet long. Due to the length, we have incorporated an additional 10-foot wide pull-off area about halfway down the access road. That could be used for a truck pull-off and also for locating a guard shack while they have active operations on the pad. The pad itself has approximate dimensions of 350 feet wide and 520 feet long. That's pretty standard for Olympus pad sites. There will be a 2-foot high earthen berm the entire way around the perimeter. So that will go the entire way around the well pad. And then this extra bump out we have in this corner is going to be used for some of their pipeline facilities. As far as the stormwater design and stormwater control at this site, we do have an E&S permit under review with DEP currently.
Sorry, could you tell me what permit again?
Sorry, the E&S permit, so erosion and sediment control permit. So on this site, we do have 4 PCSM BMPs. We have, post-construction stormwater management. PCSM. So we have a rain garden managed release concept BMP located near the entrance. And then we have 3 wet ponds, 2 of those along the access road, and a larger one down below the well pad. And those would only be for stormwater management. Olympus will install 6-foot high chain link fence around the perimeter of the well pad and around the stormwater BMPs. They will have a locked gate along the access road near the entrance that will be set back far enough to allow trucks to pull off the main road, unlock the gate, and then proceed into the site. As far as emergency access is concerned, all the first responders would have access to that gate. During active operations on the well pad, Olympus will install temporary light plants. So those would, be generally about 20 foot tall and mostly lower than the top of the sound walls that are proposed. We'll discuss the sound walls in a little more detail later on. Additionally, there's likely to be one small light plant at the guard shack, which again will be located along the access road, and that will be pointed inward to the site. When the drill rig is on the site, there will be lighting going up the derrick for safety purposes. That's referred to as halo lighting. So it's designed to point inward and downward on the site as well. But once Olympus is done with drilling and completion of the wells, there won't be any permanent lighting at the site. So this next plan I have in front of us is the proposed landscaping plan that we submitted. This was revised recently based on comments we received from the Environmental Advisory Committee. Our intent here was to provide buffering and screening of the site. So the existing site is there's a hilltop in this area, and then it slopes downward towards the well pad. So from the south and west of the site, anything off property would be screened by existing topography as well as existing woodlands that are on this slope. Anything from the west would be screened by existing woodlands that won't be disturbed. And then from the east and the north, we're actually proposing to plant trees and shrubs along the perimeter of the site to provide screening from the east and the north. So in total, we originally proposed 73 trees and 307 shrubs. Based on the recommendation of the EAC committee, we did add 35 additional trees. So we're proposing 108 trees and 307 shrubs. Now that we are still requesting a modification to the landscape requirements, and again, we feel like we've satisfied the requirements as far as screening and buffering is concerned.
It does or does not meet the ordinance?
So currently proposed, it does not meet the total number of trees and shrubs required, and so we're still requesting a modification to that amount.
Do you know what the difference is?
So the number of trees required would be 161, and we're proposing 108. So that would be 53 trees. And then the shrubs required would be 805, and we're proposing 307. So again, that would be a reduction of about 498 shrubs.
And your justification for that is?
So our justification is one, the site is already remains screened from the west and the south based on existing topography and existing trees. And then from the east and the north, we've basically maximized our planting areas with trees and shrubs along the perimeter of our site. So one thing that is different on a well pad compared to a typical commercial development is obviously we don't have parking area with landscape islands. We don't have landscaping around a building. So in order to meet the total number of trees required by the ordinance, you end up just planting random trees that really don't benefit the site much. So that's why we've proposed these along the side that's going to be visible from Logan Ferry and off-site properties.
How big are these trees? How tall are they? Will they be?
So the trees we propose are a combination of red maple, white pine, white oak, and American holly. So the red maples, when they're planted, they'll plant them with the about 2.5 inch caliper trees. So those are probably in like the 8 to 10 foot high range, but they have a medium to fast growth rate. So they can grow usually up to like 2 feet per year, with max height of 40 to 60 feet. The white pines, again, they're probably in the 8 to 10 foot tall range when they're initially planted. And again, they grow relatively fast and they can reach heights of 50 to 80 feet. The white oak, similar, they're a medium growth rate, but maximum heights they can get to 50 or 80 feet tall. And then the American holly, I don't have exact growth rates on that, but it would be an evergreen tree of similar height when it's installed. All right, this last plan I have up is just an overview of some of the facility layouts during drilling operations on the pad. So first, I'll just give you a brief schedule of what their intent is here. So obviously, assuming all approvals are in place, Olympus intends to begin construction next spring or early summer, so spring of 2023, with the first trip for drilling being December of 2023, and that'll last approximately 3 months, with completions beginning then in February of 2024, lasting through around April of 2024, and hopefully those wells that they drill the first trip would be turned in line sometime in August of 2024. As Blaine mentioned first, we do have 8 wells proposed with this application. So 4 wells will be drilled on the first trip, so the schedule I just discussed. And then the second trip for 4 additional wells, they're planning to drill and complete those in March of 2025 through the end of the year 2025. So looking at 2 trips within the first 3 years, starting after construction of the site. So as I mentioned, the first 4 wells will be located in this general area of the pad. The big box we have here generally represents where the drill rig would be set up and all the drilling equipment. These 4 wells we have shown here would be the second trip. So during the second trip, this big box would essentially get moved over and centered on those wells. We have a above ground storage tank shown for temporary water storage if they need to store water on the site. Some temporary construction and job trailers along the edge of the well pad over there. And then all this equipment on the left side of the page would represent the permanent pipeline facilities. So these would be the GPUs and then some measurement and metering equipment down in the corner.
Could you show us where the discharge point is, where the connection point is?
As far as the pipeline is concerned?
Yes.
So the pipeline itself is going to come up from this direction, and then I believe it would run along the edge of the pad back to these facilities in the corner here.
Where does it connect?
So ultimately, the pipeline is going to connect into an existing Eastern Gas transmission pipeline, which if I flip back to the first exhibit, I can show you where that goes. So these light gray lines shown going kind of northwest to southeast on the page represent several utility rights-of-ways. One of those is the existing Eastern Gas transmission line. So the pipeline is actually going to come off the well pad, loop around, and then on the Plum side of the property, we'll tap into the Eastern Gas. And Olympus has been in communication with Plum regarding that project. Next topic, just to discuss real quick, would be water sourcing. Obviously, water is a big part of the operations here. Olympus is committed to piping all their fresh water during the completions operations, and they intend to do that via a water line from their existing withdrawal in Plum along the Allegheny River. So the intent there would be to pipe that water across to this site. They're still working on final land agreements for that route, and we can provide that route to the township once all the agreements have been signed there. I would note they would still need to truck some fresh water during drilling, mostly because there's just a few trucks, so it wouldn't be worthwhile to pipe water in for that operation. And then during completions, any recycled or produced water reuse would also be trucked in. I think Manny or Joe could talk more to that if you have questions there. As Blaine mentioned, we do have Tage here tonight to talk about noise. So I'm just going to make reference that we did submit the sound impact assessment, and Tage will walk you through some more details of that in a bit. Just some remaining items that were submitted with the application. CEC did prepare the environmental impact study. That was submitted. Prepared the community impact study. That as well was submitted with the applications. We also prepared the hydrogeologic report. We have Tom Walsh here to answer questions if you had any on that. But basically, the conclusion in that report was, due to geographic barriers and streams, we would limit the impact on groundwater in the unlikely event that any spill or release were to occur on this site. Similarly, we did submit an air quality study. It was prepared by Leah Blinn. She's here as well tonight to answer any questions. But again, the conclusion there that the project would be exempt from any DEP air quality permit requirements. And based on the proposed emissions of the project, historical operation and permitting of similar well pads, federal and state regulation requirements, and existing ambient air quality of the project location, the proposed operations will have a negligible impact on air quality. And then last couple items that were submitted, we did submit PPC plan and emergency response plans. So those are both included in the application. Waste management plan, and then we did submit copies of the ENS permit, the Chapter 105 general permits, and the water management plan. Then lastly, I would touch on that we did receive review letters from the municipality regarding both the conditional use and land development applications. We submitted responses to those last week, so those should be back in the hands of the reviewers. Just to touch on a few of the highlights with those review letters. As far as the conditional use application was concerned, there were questions about wetland buffers, whether we would be encroaching within the 25-foot wetland buffer. And so our response was we have no permanent impacts there. There's no grading or facilities proposed within the buffer. We will need to install some ENS controls like filter socks within the buffers, but again, those would just be temporary conditions. And then on the land development review letter, as I mentioned earlier, the EAC did request additional landscaping. They didn't provide any direction as far as the total number of additional plantings they'd like to see, but we did add 35 trees to the revised landscape plan. The engineer requested additional details on the access road design, so those were included in the revised drawings we submitted. And then there were some stormwater management comments, mostly just required some clarification between us and the reviewing engineer. They didn't really require any design changes there. And again, those responses were submitted last week. I think that concludes my presentation. I'll open up to any questions you have for the items I discussed tonight.
Now, why don't you just proceed then?
Ryan, I actually have a couple of questions. What permits are you going to need from Plum?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What permits are you going to need from Plum?
Yeah, so we met with Plum prior to submitting this application to Murrysville. And since the entirety of the well pad is going to be located within Murrysville, just some minor grading and ENS controls on the Plum side, they're only going to require a grading permit. And as I mentioned, Plum will be reviewing the pipeline and the interconnect site, which is located on the Plum side.
That would be a conditional use application.
Correct.
And do you have any problems, and something to think about when you get to council too, whether you have a problem that conditioned upon it? We don't, we want to make sure before issuance of a building permit that that's in place and we don't, set up. I know you don't want to have it stranded either, but we want to make sure if we issue a building permit that you have the Plum permits in place.
Yeah.
The road access, is that all state road access? Is this all HOP, or is there also municipal roads?
So Logan Ferry Road is a municipal road. The other roads, Route 286 and Route 380, are both state roads.
Do you need HOPs for any of that?
I would say Joe could talk to the state roads. As far as the driveway is concerned, we will need the driveway permit from Murrysville, which we would submit following land development approval.
You mentioned the waivers that you got for distance. How many of those?
So there were 2 protected structure waivers, and they were both located just east of Logan Ferry Road.
So there's only 2 that
Correct.
are within the 750.
Correct.
Those were included with the application.
Okay.
The question about the interrelationship between the two, Mr. Johnson can perhaps provide a little more detail there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have the one to. Yep. Sorry, ma'am. Manny Johnson, Vice President of Operations. But yeah, we can't have. Got to have the interconnect in order to build the pad. So those both are needed to be able to move our gas appropriately.
And Ryan, I don't know if you're the one to talk about construction, but bunkhouses, construction trailers, what are we looking at in terms of construction?
So with the construction of the facilities and the well pad itself, most we'd have out there would be a job trailer during that duration there, and usually there's only one. Now, during your drilling and completion operations, you do have multiple, not necessarily bunkhouses wouldn't be the word to use, but a company man quarters, measurement while drilling quarters, and a mudlogger's quarters out there. And then your drilling personnel would also be on site as well during that time period. And then we do have a few folks during the completion activity that are out there around the clock for supervision purposes as well.
So that one bunkhouse trailer, how many folks can sleep in there?
Usually on it, if it's for construction, right, you're not going to have anybody staying out there during the initial construction phase. That's just a job trailer.
Okay. And anybody ever staying permanently?
Not permanently, sir.
Okay. And what's total numbers of people on site any one time during any of these phases?
During the completion phase, you've got, probably that's your highest point, and you could have, say, around approximately 30 people on location during that time period. And then you'd have a couple people staying overnight during that duration as well.
And maximum trailers total, bunkhouse trailers?
You would have 3 or 4 roughly during that drilling phase is when you have the most trailers, job trailers there. Quarters for folks to sleep.
That's all I have.
Thank you. You have anyone else scheduled as part of your presentation, sir?
Yes, next we'd like to have Mr. Joe Gooley from Stahl Schaefer walk through traffic routes, some of the proposed improvements, and some of the vehicle counts. I know that was it's always been a question for the commission and townships or municipal staff. So, Joe, if you want to take it from there.
Joe, please use the microphone and hold it in your hand.
So my name is Joe Gooley, Joeguuley. I'm a project manager for Stahl Schaefer Engineering. Olympus engaged us to provide them a route planning study. They provided us an inbound and outbound route that we investigated, pavement inventory, and if any improvements would be required to facilitate the construction of the Hermes well pad. As part of that, we generated a traffic impact study, and then we would also complete construction plans or any HOP plans that may be required as part of the findings. As Mr. Daly testified to, the inbound route from SR 366 would come down SR 380 and SR 400 over to Logan's Ferry, and then turn up on Logan's Ferry to enter the Hermes well pad. Logan's Ferry Road is the only municipal township-owned road. The other roads are state roads that are not bonded, or not posted, I'm sorry. The Logan's Ferry, from 286 all the way, past the Hermes well pad is posted with a 10-ton weight limit. So therefore, Olympus would need to enter into an EMA with the township and is willing to do so. As Ryan testified to,
Could you define, sir, Joe, what a EMA
the excess maintenance agreement. Sorry.
Too many acronyms.
I just want to make it clear what it was for.
The outbound route would, as Ryan testified to, would be down Logan's Ferry all the way to 286 and then making the left up 380 to return to 366. And as Ryan testified to, we have a secondary route from 22, and that route is basically straight up 286 onto 380. Then onto Logan's Ferry to the site. Through our analysis, we use a program called AutoTurn, which allows us to show the projected path of vehicles. We ran auto turns through the maneuvers and along the roads, and all the anticipated daily vehicles that Olympus would be using would be able to pass one another on the road without any widening along any of the roads.
On the auto turn, what about the intersection with Logan's Ferry and 286 inbound?
Inbound. So coming up 286, making a left on, is that?
Not using
No, coming back around and where you're turning onto Logan's Ferry Road from 286 or Salzburg Road. Excuse me, not 286, 380.
380.
Yes, that's
So the turning right onto
Logan's Ferry.
Logan's Ferry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the auto turn showed we would have to widen some of that intersection there, and that would be part of an HOP process because 380 is a PennDOT owned road.
Yeah.
And I believe, Olympus is in contact with the property owner to allow that widening to take place. As part of that process, we've also cored, as part of the route planning study, we also cored Logan's Ferry Road to determine the makeup, the composition of the existing pavement. We ran a pavement analysis to show what would be required, upgrades to Logan Ferry Road to accommodate the proposed well traffic.
What does that consist of?
So what is going to be proposed is an FDR procedure, which is full depth reclamation, which basically what would happen is a machine would basically come and grind up the entire existing road. It's then mixed with cement and basically placed back down to get a hardened, pavement layer, and then we would place it by bituminous overlay, your standard overlay, on top of that. And that would give us the structural number and structural stability to maintain pavement integrity throughout the duration.
Has that been submitted as part of the application?
That has not been submitted. That the construction plans and any HOP plans will be submitted prior to the August commissioners meeting.
Go ahead, sir.
So I'll jump into part of the traffic impact study now. We prepared a traffic impact study. When we prepared the study, we assumed that Olympus would be trucking all the fresh water as part of the completion stage. So that created it's going to be a conservative. The traffic impact study was a conservative analysis. The truck traffic, the proposed trips are going to be much higher in the study that we prepared if they truck the water as opposed to piping the water. So now that they've agreed to pipe the water, those traffic numbers are drastically going to decrease. So in discussions with, I don't know if you guys can see this.
Thank you.
So these two tables show a comparison. The top table is for trucking fresh water during completion. So those are the traffic volumes that were in the traffic study that was presented to the municipality. So they show a typical vehicle, which we're classifying as your everyday field worker, a pickup truck, that sort of thing, versus the heavy vehicles, which are your bigger, sand trucks, water trucks, that sort of thing. So if they were trucking the water, if they were trucking the fresh water during completions, we would roughly have a total of 136 trips during the peak hour, or 806 daily trips. Now that Olympus has proposed to pipe the fresh water, those trips drop drastically. As you can see, the peak hour trips go down to 22, and the total daily trips for piping the fresh water are 200. So with that said, again, the traffic study was prepared assuming all the fresh water was being trucked, which is going to be a conservative side as the level of service. But the traffic study found with the proposed well pad during the completion stage, which is the highest traffic generating stage of the well pad, that the overall levels of service at the intersections would be the same level of service as they were without the well pad being constructed. And again,
Joe, that's under the worst case assumption.
that is under the worst case assumption, yes. Before that August Planning Commission meeting, we plan to revise the traffic study so that it's just on record with everything, that everything's apples to apples, to reduce that and show the study with the 22 peak hour trips and the 200 total daily trips.
So this heavy vehicle is both water and sand?
Correct.
And some reused water.
That's what I was,
Yes, some reuse water, correct.
because you're not trucking any fresh.
That is correct.
During completion.
During completion stage, which is,
Ryan indicated there would be a very limited amount of freshwater truck during drilling.
Drilling.
which again, the completion stage is what was studied in the traffic impact study because it would be the most traffic intense.
Can you break down the number of trucks that would be trucking recycled water versus sand?
Yeah.
Okay, could you provide that
Yes.
with your August data?
Yep.
Joe, you analyze those at each phase, right? Or did you break it down?
So we analyzed it. So we looked at the 2022 existing from when we took the traffic counts to a 2023 no build, which would just be the growth of those 2022 volumes, normal growth as if nothing, no site was developed. And then in 2023, we did a build scenario with the well pad, but we only analyzed the completion stage because again, it generates the most traffic.
And did you put a time frame around that? How long is that going to last? I know you're saying operationally work indefinitely, but we're not going to allow it indefinitely. So we're going to put a box around it, how long those operations are going to take place. So we understand it doesn't matter infinitely, they could work at levels of service that are fine. But what we're looking for you to do is to put boxes around, especially since we're hearing now you're doing 2 trips. Yeah, so we want you to, just like we did, not nearly as you know, Manny, the concerns because of the width of the right-of-way or whatever, but we really want to figure out, what's going on when.
So, our study would have only, we're just looking at it that day, at that 1 day peak hour, AM, PM, and Saturday.
Yeah, but Manny knows what we're looking for as far as each phase of the well development, number of heavy trucks.
Yeah, sure, and we can obviously provide as much detail as needed on the time frames, but in general, with what we have planned here at the Hermes with each trip, your completion activity, which is the one that obviously gets the most focus there, you're looking in that 60 to 75 day range on that front. So temporary in nature, get in and get out as fast as we can.
Just translate it.
2 times, right?
2 times. Yep, you got it.
I think with that, if I'm open to any other questions.
So, I just want to clarify. The short piece of Logan's Ferry between Route 380 and 286, you're not entering or leaving vehicles that way?
So they will be exiting that way, yes.
Right.
So they will come down and make a left to return.
Okay, so you're not going back down to the intersection of,
Yeah.
like, where the old Cooper's place was?
No,
No, they're exiting on the
they're going
short.
straight. How wide is that portion of the road? Because right now that road's not very wide,
22 feet.
right? And you will make it how wide?
We will not improve to widen that road at all. It'll stay at 22 feet wide.
Are you anticipating any pavement improvements in that stretch?
Yes, that all of Logan's Ferry to the interconnect site, which is, I believe, in this general area here, will be, as I said, FDR'd. So we will improve that whole stretch of Logan's Ferry. Will not be widened with the exception of the turn here. But pavement width will stay the same, but we will FDR the entire stretch of Logan's Ferry.
What's the width of the Logan's Ferry on the other side of 380?
This here, it's all roughly 22 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you only have vehicles exiting on the short stretch of Logan's Ferry.
Or only vehicles exiting, making a left out, correct.
All right, so at no time will there be the possibility of 2 sand trucks going,
Passing each other.
On this stretch of Logan's Ferry,
correct.
no.
and that'll be properly signed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How do you, and I'm sure you probably don't know, but Manny, how do you instruct the drivers as to this, how they're supposed to enter and leave the site?
So we handle it a few different ways, right? We'll have our pre-job meetings with all of our haulers. All of our haulers are also given a very specific instruction set that they are to have in the cabs of all their trucks to know exactly where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to go. So, for example, if you're operating during school bus times, they know they're not to be, passing a school bus at a particular time as well. So all of that is integrated into their paperwork. We also visit with those haulers, as I mentioned, and then we have appropriate signage as well out there, similar to what you may have seen out on Titan, where it's like no left turn here on that front. So we do sign properly. We meet with them and make sure that folks are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Any other questions regarding traffic?
Just a couple, and that the left turns out onto 286, Logan's Ferry. Is there a potential of any queuing issues? I know that's pretty long, but those trucks are pretty long too. Is it where it could
The traffic study didn't really show anything now, and again, when we redo it, I'm anticipating, obviously, since we're drastically cutting truck traffic, it's going to be greatly reduced. So no, I don't anticipate any queuing issues.
You're mentioning rebuilding the road. Is that pre or post construction?
I don't think.
And if so,
I think the thought is pre.
it makes it easier because then we don't have to put a deadline on when you have to have it done.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, there's always timing mechanisms with that, obviously, times of years, pavement, whatnot, but our goal is before we start, especially our drilling and completion operations, to have that road fully improved. Sometimes we'll do stuff simultaneously during the construction process, so that's not something that's uncommon for us, but before we get to drilling and completions, our goal is to have that road fully improved.
The question I have to follow up with some of these turns, the one route was coming into 86, like heading northeast, right, and making that left onto 380.
Yeah, nope. Go back.
Yeah, coming up from the bottom of the page,
Right.
and then making that left right there.
Yeah.
There was no issues with that turn. I mean, you had plenty of room there? Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Bill, you have any more on that?
That's it.
Go ahead with your next presenter.
Our last presenter is Mr. Tage Rosendahl from Acoustical Control.
My name is Tage, T-A-G-E, Rosendahl, R-O-S-E-N-D-A-H-L. As I said, my name is Tage Rosendahl. I'm a regional manager for Acoustical Control. We are a company that specializes in noise consulting and mitigation. I've been with Acoustical Control in this position since 2011. My responsibilities daily are, running the day-to-day operations, overseeing our monitoring activities, mitigation activities, and impact modeling. I was retained by Olympus Energy to perform an ambient sound study and a sound impact assessment for the Hermes well pad. An ambient study is basically a study to try to determine what your average background sound levels are. So it's usually done over a period between 24 and 72 hours is pretty common. Occasionally you see shorter periods, but the reason is so that you accumulate a large enough data pool that you can kind of filter out any anomalies that would artificially inflate the data. Something like a shotgun, railroad, airplane passing, it kind of filters that out. I also performed a sound impact assessment, and a sound impact assessment is basically predictive modeling. So what we do to perform those is we take the common noise levels from the equipment that's going to be operating consistently on site during drilling, both vertical and horizontal, and completions. And we take all of those sound levels from that equipment and we put that on the location on a map, and then we run it through software that propagates the noise levels across the map. So what it basically is doing is telling you what the sound levels we predict to be at specific locations, receivers, noise-sensitive areas, and stuff like that. So again, the purpose is to determine, what the sound levels are going to be at nearby receivers. And this is done for compliance purposes or planning or good neighbor practices. So kind of the process of this is, again, we take acoustical data from the equipment that's going to be operating on site. Those layouts and equipment are provided by Olympus. We take that data and then we plug acoustical data that's either been field collected or manufacturer's data. It's pretty readily available for most equipment these days. And then so we plug that in with the layouts provided, and we introduce things like elevation, topography. We can add vegetation. We typically do not add foliage because of, in this area, we don't necessarily know what time of year this is going to be. So in an effort to be more conservative, we don't utilize that. And then the software is called Brule and Carr, B-R-U-E-L-K-J-A-E-R. It's Dutch. And so we run all of those inputs through the data, and then we determine what the sound levels are likely to be at different locations. So in this scenario, for the Hermes well pad, I don't know if you can see this, but we looked at 25 different locations around the Hermes well pad. Sure.
I do have a copy of the comment letter from your acoustical consultant, David's Acoustics, which attaches your SIA.
Correct.
Sound impact
page he's talking about. It's about halfway back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then after we take that and determine kind of the locations, sound levels that we're going to see for the 3 different phases, vertical drilling, horizontal drilling, and completions, we look at that data and try to determine whether or not it meets ordinance or if there's going to be some form of mitigation that is needed. If it looks like mitigation is needed, we can drop various barriers in. So barriers, one of the components of a barrier is STC, which is Standard Transmission Class. And so the barriers that we modeled here were 32 feet tall and an STC of 34. So basically, STC is a measure of how much noise is going to be blocked by a particular medium. In this case, it's very dense, mass-loaded vinyl. So per the ordinance requirements, you're basically looking at 50 dBA during the day, 45 dBA in the evening and at night. So that's kind of the most restrictive parts of this. So that's kind of where we set our boundary at, is what our target goal was. The ambient sound study that we took in April over a 72-hour period, the average sound level was 48.51, so 3.5 decibels above the nighttime and evening allowable limits. So again, for the SIA, we assumed a 32-foot barrier just because we were predicting to be over the sound levels at some of the receiver points. Again, we modeled 25 receiver points, 11 of which are in Plum Borough. During vertical drilling, we met all the ordinance requirements, with the highest being 43.9 dBA at the surface owner's property. Note that this is also below the average ambient that we took in April. During horizontal drilling, we also met all ordinance requirements at all times, with the highest being R1, which is the surface owner again, at 42.5. During completions, we met all the requirements for the 45 dBA, except at R1, which was slightly above ambient, again, the surface owner, which was 52.3. R2 was 48.8, basically what your ambient sound levels are. R3 was 51.4, slightly above the ambient. R4 was 47.3, below your ambient. And R24 was 48.9, which is basically your ambient. All other receiver points that we modeled were below the 45 decibel threshold for evening and nighttime.
That's all operations?
Yes, that's drilling. So the last part was just the completions, but all operations, vertical and drilling, we predict it be under the 45 at all receiver locations.
Did you model diesel or electric generator?
This is a diesel fleet. Olympus is requesting a waiver of 10 decibels at all times, which would effectively, 10 decibels at all times above ambient, which would effectively give a limit of 58.51. How does that compare with Titan? To compare it to Titan, the ambient we took there was 58.64, significantly higher, but the time of year was summer, so there's more insect noise and things like that, which gave an elevated level. But again, so that effectively gave, with the 10 decibel waiver, a sound level of 68.64.
So the modification or waiver being requested here is effectively about 10 decibels less than what the modification was granted for type, is that right?
That's correct.
And I know you communicated with Olympus on this issue. Or is Olympus, or are you aware?
Sir, you're going to have to
Use the microphone.
Microphone.
I know you've communicated with Olympus on this issue, and are you aware of whether there have been any complaints so far with respect to noise at the Titan site?
To my knowledge, no. And then we have the Babbage Consultants letter. So we will be providing a written response to that. We are working with my engineer on some of those items currently, and we will provide that to Olympus to provide to you shortly. The hours of operations that we are assuming for this will be 24 hours. So again, the limits that we are looking to beat are going to be the 45 decibel, or the waiver of 48 point, wherever it went. So 58.51, sorry. The consultant did mention the plumb ordinance. The plumb ordinance requires an ambient plus 10 decibels during daytime drilling and 7 at night. Then during completions, 10 decibels. So if you use an effective 55 decibel limit, that gives you basically 65 decibels during the completions portions of the operation, which is typically going to be your loudest. So
at least on its face,
No.
Patty, give him that.
so at least on its face, the plumb ordinance has a substantially higher noise limit than the Murrysville ordinance. Is that right?
that's correct.
So are you proposing to put monitoring out in the field during the completion and drilling?
We will.
And they will be in the vicinity of these areas, these receiver properties that were identified as exceeding?
We haven't identified exactly where those locations are going to be yet.
Okay. I think it was a recommendation made in the Babbage study about the exceeding levels, R1, 2, 3, 4, and R24.
Olympus would work with the municipality and the landowners as to where the preferred sites for those monitoring devices would be.
Okay.
And that's similar to what we did at the Titan location.
Mm-hmm.
The consultant also brought up the concern that there was LMAX was not referenced to. Basically, we use the LEQ as our ceiling. So if you have the LEQ as your ceiling, the LMAX would be higher than that. So we're effectively being lower than what the maximum sound levels would be.
Make your case to the consultant.
We can do that, sure. And then L-peak, generally this isn't something that is brought up with impact assessments due to the transient nature of the noise. It's unweighted, so it's not like, A-weighting is the human ear's response, so there's a bit of a curve the way that it's laid out, but it's to what we hear. So the very low end and the very, very high end are kind of penalized for that. So L-peak is not weighted, but generally not looked at for an impact assessment like this because, again, usually your peak sound levels are going to be something close to the microphone or the monitoring equipment. Dogs, again, things that are flying over, airplanes are frequently things that are moving around, things that birds chirping. We frequently, when we're monitoring, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden your monitors are lighting up because all of our monitoring equipment has threshold limits. So when there's an exceedance, we are alerted to it, and it has a sound clip so we can identify what the noise source was. And so generally, your peak sound levels are going to be something like that. So that's usually why we don't look at them as far as, the noise levels from the equipment operating on site. And as far as the pure tone question, kind of similarly, we don't typically get into the weeds too much with this because it's just not common. So basically, the sound levels that's coming off of this is a multi-frequency noise. So there's all kinds of sound levels across the frequency band. So we generally don't look at these. It's certainly something that is doable. So we can look at that to accommodate the consultant.
Thank you.
Good? Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
Yeah, so what is the way, you're not seeking any waiver?
Oh, yeah, we are seeking a waiver.
Decibels
because-
above.
10.
10 dB.
So but that 10 above is basically the ambient for the Titan.
Correct. Are
you looking to go 10 above that to equal the Titan?
No.
So in the Titan voltage, maybe you can help us to understand it. We were even going, even with the ambient being 10 dBA above this ambient, we had durations of time during certain operations where it went above those, and requests were made for a waiver for increases above those for certain periods of duration. You're not asking for any...
It was over the ambient level of, or not the ambient, I'm sorry, the 45 decibels was the waiver request.
I understand, but the ambient's already lower and you're asking for the 10 dBA already. And even with that, because we had permitted increases, considering with that ambient, of 5, 10, 15, and 20 dBA increases above that. So I'm not understanding.
Well, those, the way your ordinance is written, allowed for increases just for short periods of time within an hour window.
Yeah, and we want you to identify those and put limits on them. This is what we did before.
Okay.
So we know there's general operations, ambient plus 10, you're generally good. Then we're going to have those times where we're going to have those peaks. We want to put a box around them just like we did at Titan. Duration, peaks for each step.
Anything else, Mr. Siddick?
Nothing.
Nothing else for us, sir?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all we have, although, again, our air and hydro consultants are here if the Planning Commission does have any questions for them.
Is there any public that wants to talk?
Well, I just have a couple questions just for clarification for you. When your construction schedule, when do you expect to start construction of the pad?
So their current schedule would be to start next spring into the summer of next year.
23.
Correct.
Okay, and you still have to get landowner acquiescence to the...
For pipeline.
For the pipeline. You have to get permission from the guy on the corner to improve that intersection. And how are you coming with the DEP and all on this, other permits?
So again, the ENS permit is still under review with DEP. We're waiting for comments on that. The Chapter 105 permit for impacts within the floodway of one of the streams, that we have responded to comments. So I'd anticipate that would be that permit would be issued shortly. As far as you mentioned the water line right-of-way acquisitions, the water really wouldn't be required until, again, the completions operations begin. That wouldn't be until February of 2024. So they do have additional time, past when construction would begin there. And just as a note, we have begun survey and field work on the water line route. There's just a few agreements that they still need signed there.
How many feet is that?
A lot.
That's what I'm asking.
I think it's about 5 miles from their existing withdrawal site over to Hermes.
We're going to pump the Midas site and then over here.
Correct.
So you're asking for approval of the conditional use without identifying the source of water?
No, the source of the piped water would be the withdrawal from the Allegheny River.
So what happens if you don't get the right-of-ways?
We're committing that that's a condition of approval, that, we have to have that.
Good with that.
All right, just so we understand. So you're not going to want any earth-moving permits until you have all the right-of-ways?
Permits where? Here?
For the pad?
Oh, I think we'd want the permits for the pads.
So you're going to
next
build
spring.
a pad without knowing how you're going to get the water, or being obligated to provide water over land? And I assume this pipe is above ground.
It can vary, right, above and below, depending on your landowner agreement, what you got there. Anything above ground, just keep in mind, is temporary on that front.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, hey, what's the sequence here? And so, there are times where we've got our permit from the DEP, we've got all our conditions met here. Maybe we don't have 100% of a right-of-way or it required there. That's a business risk that we would take on at that front. But as Blaine mentioned, right, we're going to pipe fresh water into this location, as we assume that's going to be a condition of approval there.
You also have, in your back pocket, you could always put the pipeline in the public road right of way. You've got a story of a potable water supply that you could take from MAWC.
Yes, you're correct. That is not considered one of our primaries, though,
Cost.
at this point, right? So there's also a capacity when you work with the municipal authority as well. They're going to give you so much allotment, so sometimes they can't fulfill the water needs that we would necessarily want. But yeah, we've got active relationships with MAWC. We also actively work with the city of New Kensington and our Upper Borough area, and have had really good relationships with those folks, and they've provided fresh water to us via pipe as well.
And just so we get clear, get municipality comfortable with that, this will be a condition that you'll agree to, so it isn't something we're really going to municipality to be subject to a challenge that we didn't have the right to impose it. Is that right?
Is there any members of the Planning Commission have any further questions? I'd like to see if anybody in the public has any questions or comments.
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Any member of the public, please come forth and give us your name and address. And no? Hearing no comments?
I make a motion, we close the hearing.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Morrison, would you deem this application as it now stands complete?
The conditional use application, yes.
And the land use application?
We can do that at the next meeting, Mr. Mido.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You and your little army.
Good seeing you guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is consider a recommendation for rezoning approximately 21.76 acres of land on Logan's Ferry Road. This is parcels 4910130011, 4910130012, 49130013, and 4910130014. This is to change the zoning from R1 to R3.
If the Planning Commission would allow me, can we take these out of order since the people from Tommy's Car Wash are in from out of town, have an early flight tomorrow? I'd like to get them out first.
No, I have no
I got
problem.
both of
Anyone
these.
have a objection?
Nope.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We will change the order to take Tommy's Car Wash. Have your consultants.
Do. My name is Charles Hergenroder. I'm an attorney for Tommy's Car Wash. Live here in Murrysville. And I'm usually last on the agenda, thanks to Mr. Mytall, but today I'm last and also last. Right?
Yeah, you're still last. Charlie.
The last.
I'd like to introduce Adele, Paul. Come on up. This is our engineer, Adele Bees.
Okay.
Paul Savine from Tommy's Car Wash. And she'll go through the.
Yeah, you're going to have to pull the microphone down or use that microphone in your hand.
How's that?
That's much
Good.
better.
Okay, great.
Give your name, please.
Sure. Adele Beeves, Beaves. I'm with Kimley Horn here in Pittsburgh. So thanks for hearing us today. You had understood previously, seen this plan several months ago when it was presented previously. Since that time, we have received engineers' comments, addressed those comments with a full resubmission on June 21st. And then we have also received, as of last week, a second round of minor comments that have the last remaining pieces that need to be addressed, such as third parties, waivers, and things like that. And I can give you a background of the project again, just to orient you to the site again, or we can jump right to comments.
I think we're all familiar with the site.
You are? Okay. So we can save a little time for you and then just really talk about, what we want to talk about today is just the last remaining items that are on the engineer's review letter. We have right now in our hands a engineer's review letter, and then we also have a traffic comments letter, both of which I have in front of me today, and I can speak to some of the items that are on the list. I think with tackling these in order, I suppose traffic, we could probably just speak to some of the additional comments. I did speak with the traffic reviewer, Mike Mudry, once we received the comments, and he and I had discussed, the fact that some of his comments relate to items he wanted to see corrected in the narrative, and some things that didn't match between the scoping application, which was several months prior, and then the report that you have in front of you today. Mike did not feel that anything was a deal breaker, I think, in terms of changing the study, and so he felt that we were, on track. We do plan on making a resubmission to the board before the board meeting, and we are proposing to make that on July 20th, so there's enough time to take a look at it again before the next meeting, if that's the way this goes. So that's our timing for that submission. And we also are working on PennDOT, very minor comments with PennDOT on the HOPs that were submitted for the driveway and the stormwater connection. And those comments from PennDOT are really down to the minutia relating to the need for a stormwater approval letter to be sent to them and some, the forms to be filled out and things like that. So that's really traffic. And if you have questions as we go through the rest of it, we can address both of them together. On to civil. What I normally do is I'll try to aggregate the comments because there's several here that are related to the same items. So items such as, let me move this down a little bit here. Third-party reviews are on here as several times. So what we have is remaining third parties are the NPDES permit for earth disturbance during construction activities. That is in progress. We have received our comments. Administrative approval has been obtained, and we are on to the technical review. We've received our first round of technical comments and have responded to those. So, oh, sure. Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you. So we are under the technical review comment period for the Conservation District for the DEP permit. So that is forthcoming soon. PennDOT, like I said, we have second round comments, and we are addressing those in the next several weeks. So those are really the two outstanding third-party review comments. We do have some outstanding comments on the letter relating to the need to get a water letter from the municipal authority, which we have spoken with them today, and that letter will be forthcoming, and we will send it. We also have comments related to sewage planning, and I did have a conversation with Franklin Township this morning about the status of that. It does appear to me that we do not need to have the formal sewer module undertaken because a lateral does exist that is being rebuilt currently that can serve the project. So because we're only using one tap and there's one tap existing, we do not need to go through that process. So that takes care of several of the comments on the letter. And then we have several technical waivers that we've requested. You have the list of waivers, I believe, and those are things we can discuss tonight. Waivers for air quality, environmental. We also we're requesting to waive the hydrogeologic study and the community and environmental impact. We can discuss those at length if you'd like. And then, to go in order, if you would like, through the remainder of the letter regarding the technical issues, we can take them one by one if that works easier for you. But, I just wanted to at least get through some of the things that are, the normal course of business and getting this approved so we can really focus on the technical questions that you may still have.
Well, two things come to mind. One is the requirement under the ordinance that all the outside devices, in this case vacuums, be under cover. Has that been addressed at all?
So we did submit the noise study that showed the levels of sound coming from the outside vacuums, which are the items of concern. What we have, in looking at it, we looked at the retaining wall that surrounds those vacuums on three sides, combined with some bolstered landscaping and the retaining wall itself, and felt that that was all right. Okay. Keep going. Okay.
Go ahead.
So we're proposing that the sound study, combined with the fact that these are surrounded on three sides with some heavy landscaping and retaining walls, was sufficient to, buffer against the sound that was coming from the vacuums. We can request a waiver if need be. We did not do that after speaking with the township and going back and forth on that and waiting the results of the noise study. We felt we didn't need to ask for it at that time, but we certainly can still ask for that. And we have some precedent examples, I understand, in the neighborhood of areas that do not have those enclosed. So we felt that there was a chance we could discuss that.
Yeah, I think that there are a couple other car washes that have one or two vacuums outside. You're proposing like 13 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Also, there was some concern regarding the appearance of the building and whatnot. Has that been addressed?
Yes, that has been addressed. You were supplied with two alternate architectural standard drawings, which I can actually pull up and share with you here. Those are alternate drawings, depict the two options for changes to the facade from the standard, the Tommy standard, which is a metal panel, a red metal panel facade. What you have in your, I don't know if that's able to be seen.
Could you move my screen over, please?
Me? Or?
No, there we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, this is the, and it's hard to see with the density of the brick, but there's two options. There is a red brick, and then there is a gray brick option. So the owner is prepared to utilize one of those two standards in lieu of the metal panel. So what that gives you is a more traditional look. It's a more muted color than the metal panel, and it is a fully bricked, except for the centerpiece there, which is where the tunnel is, and that really, due to its shape, couldn't be built out of brick. But the metal panel from the original submission that you had all seen, I think back in February, is no longer the proposal.
So which one is that? Is that the gray brick?
That's the dark red brick. If you zoom in, you can see that it actually is a dark red. The gray one is a little bit lighter. And the number actually should say the B.
Oh, I see it.
2. Yeah, the B2 is a gray. The B1 is a dark red brick. I mean, and that's the branding, obviously, of the Tommies is the red color. But again, this is a fully brick.
Is the bottom brick or stone?
The bottom is, let's see here, we can see out here. This is an M1. This is
Split face. It's actually split face block.
Split face block, and then brick above that.
brick.
Okay. This view here is labeled back elevation. Is that from new 22?
That back elevation will be on old 22.
Okay, and that's, the base of that is about 10 or 12 feet below the elevation of old 22.
Correct. There is a slope down into the site and then the retaining wall in the back there. It is about 11 feet. And for comparison purposes, the tallest parapet on the building is 28 feet. So I know you had mentioned this when we spoke. So we wanted to talk about that. First of all, wanted to note to you that there are no HVAC units on the roof. I know there was concern about being able to view more of the roof since it was lowered, but there are no pieces of equipment. And then just doing the math, you still have, 17 feet of vertical height on the building face. So it's not going to be visible.
You're not going to see the roof.
Right, you won't see the roof.
What's it look like from new 22?
So if you scroll down a little bit, then you'll have the front facade.
Is that that's the exit? Okay, and this is the entrance. Here.
And it's down farther even. The front elevation is the bottom left. So pan to the left a little bit, please.
Where's the vacuums?
They're on the other side.
They're on the old 22 side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're adjacent to the building and then in the lane across.
Okay. That's the gray brick.
That is the gray brick.
Okay.
Well, certainly an improvement over what we previously saw.
I hoped you would find that to be more appealing. So that was the proposal for addressing that comment. Do you have any additional discussion on that?
No.
Okay.
I think so. Where's the do you have the landscaping plan there?
What's the drawing number?
It is L100.
Could you just briefly describe where's the wall and what are you planning on top of the wall? And
Sure.
Let me bring that over and we can blow it up.
Does this work? So I can at least point. Okay, great. So we are proposing here's the wall. For reference, here's the store limits, and then you have a parking bay here with some vacuums, a drive aisle, and then the parking bay. The retaining wall extends from approximately here, which is at a 0 height. It does extend along here, over here, and then across and back down and terminates on the left side.
the height of that wall is what?
Maximum height, I believe, is close to 5. Yeah, 5 feet.
Okay. And is there a fence or anything on top of that?
What we're proposing is some dense landscaping, and then there was a comment made by the county economic division that mentioned trees underneath the wires. So we were taking the trees that we had proposed there, and we made them an ornamental height. So they're like a red bud tree that's an ornamental height so that it doesn't interfere with the wires. And then the shrubbery is some dense evergreen shrubbery planted, as close together as you can, really. You don't want to plant them too close together or they will die. So they're really planted just to create a dense buffer along that wall.
Is there a sidewalk out there?
There is.
There's one proposed.
And that is right here.
And then out in the front on 22, you've got 4 or 5 trees, and the rest is what, lawn?
The rest is lawn, and this lawn actually in particular in the front here is an amended soil profile that is going to be used for stormwater water quality. So it's a section of dense vegetative cover, but it's going to look like a lawn.
Okay.
There was a comment made with the excavation occurring on the Old William Penn side of some geotechnical information needed.
Yes, I did see that. There was a geotechnical comment, actually. It looked like it was incorporated into the civil. So, we talked about looking for geotechnical comments, and I did see that. The discussion was just related to excavation here in the area where there are some loose soils. And, one of the things I would say is that the presence of a retaining wall, the design will be addressing that condition, but that's going to be able to be supporting, it will be designed as a design build to support the right-of-way and the slopes behind it. And actually what we had done just during the normal course of grading for this site is looked at a way to actually soften the slope behind the wall. At one point it was a shorter wall and it had a steeper slope above it. So we actually raised the wall a little bit, which helps the slope behind the wall to be less drastic, and that's a better long-term condition. But this wall will be a modular block retaining wall, and it'll be designed, the grids will be designed and the foundation will be designed with the specific geotechnical information as a design parameter so that you don't have overturning or heaving or, a failure above the wall.
How far is the wall from the right-of-way?
The wall from the right-of-way, let me look on, that we have that dimension on this plan specifically, but it is looking to be probably 11 feet, 11 to 12 feet.
And the back site was only 5 feet? Is that?
So I was talking horizontal feet from the edge of the wall to the right-of-way is 11.
No, the height of the wall.
The vertical height is 5, okay. 5 at maximum.
And it's 11 feet horizontally from the right-of-way.
So you'll have the roadway, and you'll have the right-of-way, then the sidewalk, then you'll have a planted buffer, and then you'll have the retaining wall.
And the roadway from the exit area up to William Penn, that's about a 14% slope.
It is.
According to the profile. And then how long is the relatively flat pad up above?
So I can take you to the profile. So there's a vertical curve built into that meets, roadway design standards. We have looking here across the bottom, each of these tick marks is 20 feet. So you have, upwards of 25 feet here that are a flattened zone where you're coming down at 1.8%, and then you have the vertical curve here, and then you go to the 14. And then at the bottom, we also have a vertical curve. I'm
more concerned with people pulling out and there being a flat area up there for them to look both ways. Jim, was there any concern with making left turns out of this place?
There was a number of comments on the traffic review. I don't know that there was any on the left-hand turn. I don't recall seeing one on the left-hand turns.
Okay. I don't know whether you've had time to review all these comments from the traffic engineer.
I spoke at length with Mike Mudry about the comments, and I relayed those to our traffic team internally.
Okay, but you haven't had a chance to formally respond to
respond? No, we have not, other than to discuss, the timing of a resubmission, and then just to talk to Mike about, any items he thought were needed to be prioritized. But, I think we just talked about some, as this project evolved from the initial scoping meeting, the scoping meeting was held early on. Then there was a traffic memo that was written, and then of course, that evolved into a full-blown study. And so I think Mike was really specifically wanting to see connectivity between the three submissions, and there were a few items that did need to have explanations as to why the numbers were different. So we're correcting those.
How are you coming with your NPDES permit?
We're doing well. I mean, the second round of submission of comments is in. We have our administrative review, and our technical review has been responded to. They're reviewing it now.
Morrison, is there anything, any items outstanding on this?
Mainly permitting and the traffic.
Okay. What way are you requesting a waiver for the enclosure over the mechanical equipment, the outside mechanical equipment?
Well, so we hadn't, but we will, if that's what you would prefer.
Well, I think you have to get a variance from the zoning hearing board on that one.
Is that a section of zoning code that's
yes,
discusses?
that's a section of the zoning ordinance.
Which obviously would be a change to the schedule. Does the intent of the ordinance section speak to the noise, and have we addressed or will address your noise concerns?
I understand your rebuttal to that is that you did a noise study. I'm just saying that we're saying that the ordinance says it's got to be covered.
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah, and so that would have to be if a waiver is not appropriate.
We can't do a waiver. We got to do a variance.
It's not up to us.
Not our call.
Ballpark.
Understood. We'd have to talk about that and what that would mean in terms of the schedule. Hopefully,
We can ask for a variance. There's no question. I just wondered if others before us had to get a variance.
Doesn't matter, Charlie, what happened before.
Precedent.
Take that up with the zoning hearing board.
Yeah, we can do that.
I
don't know that what they've done. The only thing they haven't done is put a roof on top of the equipment.
And I think that's the issue. We don't have the power, and nor does council have the power to
Waive
that requirement.
Not in our ballpark.
We can do that. Like I say, we can do that.
Or you can put a cover over it.
Put a cover over it.
there was at one point we had talked about whether these individual pieces qualified as the operational equipment. Right. I mean, we looked at that, and I now have to go back and look at the section of code that discussed it. But it's not in the definition. I don't necessarily know that these vacuums meet that.
As a vacuum operational equipment.
Correct. Right. Especially given the fact that it's not. It's not.
I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. I mean, would that be something you'd be willing to consider as an evaluation of whether or not these things actually qualify?
And that may be part of the argument.
Well, that would be an interpretation by the zoning hearing board.
Yeah.
Or the zoning officer.
You could try that route and do a written.
Kicking the can down the road.
We're just going round and round. The real answer is we put an awning over it.
Say what?
Put an awning over it.
That's a cover.
That's a cover.
Put an awning over it.
Okay.
There you go.
That issue goes away then.
Okay.
Mr. Morrison, is there anything else outstanding on this?
I think the issue at hand now is the traffic, and it'll be interesting to see the response, especially with the timing, with the rhythm system on 22.
Yeah, and that we are planning to do some additional site reconnaissance that Mike requested. Basically, it's centered around the fact that we used timings per the published guidance, ITE guidance for signal timing, and because that's an adaptive signal, Mike suggested that we actually go out and measure the timing and use that in our study instead, which we will do. Mike and I talked about the fact that that's not going to meaningfully change anything. We're talking about, a few seconds, but it is something that he wanted to see, so we said we would do it.
You mentioned something about timing. What is your dilemma over that?
I mean, timing, signal timing. I meant signal.
Not
yeah.
timing as far as the process, approval process.
No, it's sorry, I should have clarified. Signal timing, which is just the cycle of which the red, the red-green cycle.
No, I think we're referring to two different things here.
Yeah, the conditional use timing. Your time waiver is going to run out on you.
Oh, sure, and we can ask for an extent. Now, I had asked for an extension previously to take us through the day after the next council meeting. So we hope that today we could potentially move forward to the next step with a conditional approval, and then, by the time we would go to that next meeting, we would have the majority of these wrapped up and submitted. And then we wouldn't necessarily
I'll ask members of the Planning Commission and the staff, is this ready to be recommended to council one way or the other?
I don't think so.
I would like to see the traffic response.
Okay.
And if we were to get that to you, I had thrown out the date of the 20th of July, which is 2 weeks from now. We could meet whatever.
I can't make that decision. Planning.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we were to be able to turn out a response,
we could certainly hear it at next month's meeting. I just don't. You mentioned someone mentioned timing. I assumed it was a constructability issue and permitting issue.
There are some timing issues as far as finance and what have you is concerned. So obviously, we've been at this since February. So timing is getting to be very important from a financial situation.
Understood. If, assuming that everything was brought in as the engineer said, within 2 weeks, we should be able to vote on this
in August,
in our August meeting, and then council could. We're at the second Tuesday in August. When's council meet then?
Well, in fairness to council, they may want to look at it more than once. So I would say the earliest would be the first Wednesday in September. The earliest could be the second meeting in August, but to be safe, I would say the first meeting in September.
When's that second meeting in August?
It would be the third Wednesday.
So the 17th.
The 17th, right after, the week after.
Then we would meet, on the 9th, and they would meet on the 17th.
And then they could hopefully
speed it up at the meeting in August.
And then have the first meeting in September, they could vote on it.
Yeah.
So there's no time frame or threshold with which we could get you traffic information in time to be still on the board meeting?
Yeah, I think if you get it in the next couple of weeks on the traffic, and you get a acceptable response from Mr. Mudry, that would work out. Now, do we need a time waiver? We still need a time waiver for a month or so. You can work out the details with Mr. Morrison.
We could submit a time waiver. I'm still trying to understand, like, if we do, so there is no way to avoid coming back in front of, for planning one more time?
I don't think so.
Okay, so then we would be able to go to planning again in August and then board in August again at that second meeting.
With the second meeting, council would see it.
Council. Yes. The council would be in August 17th.
That's right. So that would be the earliest approval date. I'm thinking the latest would be the first meeting in September, would be the first Wednesday in September.
Yeah, I was trying to recall if we actually asked for it to the end of the second meeting.
No, it's only to August.
Only to the first, so August 4th. Okay.
Yeah.
I usually put it the day after the meeting, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we essentially could potentially do a 2-week extension that we would need.
I can't convince you to move forward a little quicker than that?
No, I think the staff has made it clear that they want to see responses to the traffic study.
That's the only thing that's open, traffic study?
Yeah, the only other thing, you mentioned some type of an awning, maybe some couple of sketches or something on what you have in mind there for this awning thing. Well, I
don't think it's going to save.
Something.
I mean, my thought is I don't think it's going to save much time if we would even make any recommendation tonight, because if it's got to still come back in, go back out to our traffic engineer, right? And all that be ironed out before a council meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think you're really, I don't think.
We're not ready for them.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, you want to deal with us.
You still have the noise thing to resolve too.
That's true as well. I mean, we with the time we have remaining, if it was for another planning meeting or another council meeting, we were planning to respond to that.
Okay.
I do, just in my conversations with Mike, and I know he's not here. We felt comfortable. We've worked together quite a bit in the past.
It would be good if you could have gotten a letter out of Mike that there are no issues here, but
couldn't convince
Mike's
him of
not
that.
going to do that. Okay.
No, but we'll work closely with Mike. We definitely will do that during the course of the next
All right,
several
so can I have a motion then to table this until
I
our
make a
next
motion,
meeting?
Mr. Chairman, to table this till, August meeting,
August 9th.
9th.
August 9th.
I'll second.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay.
I guess I don't need to abstain to that.
Okay.
We'll
All
see you
right.
in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're almost there.
Almost there. The next item, which was on the request of our learned solicitor, Mr. Hogenroder, is now the rezoning request of the property on Logan's Ferry Road. Yes. Thank you.
This request, I guess, was somewhat controversial at the public hearing. This is small development, 12 townhouse units, one single-family home. We thought that we were complying, or at least the developer thought that they were complying with what the municipality wanted to see, an R3. If you remember, several months ago, you looked at an overlay district for an R3s. Because there was some need for R3 zoning in Murrysville for people like some of us that are here tonight that need all on one floor living and don't want to live in a house anymore, want something smaller. Also, the area, I still believe, is very conducive to the R3. Someone chastised me for saying you could walk to the shopping. So I tried it.
Your microphone needs to go up. There you go.
Better?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I tried it. So I walked.
You did it?
I did it twice. And if, I'm no spring chicken anymore, and if I can do it, anybody else can do it. So I parked in Ferry's parking lot. I walked down through the buildings, came down, across the highway, walked up to where the site would be. Then I turned around, walked back up to Ferry's. And wasn't that bad. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. And also, it's close to everything. I don't know if you've gone down there. I've gone down several times to see what they're talking about. I'm not sure I saw the same things that the people do, but they live there. I'm not going to say that they're wrong, but we thought that was a very conducive site to the R3. The project, as you know, the topography makes it tough. You can only build 12 townhouses and one single-family home. It's not a big development at all. The zoning has nothing to do with the plan that comes along. As you know, there's going to be stormwater management plans. There's going to be traffic studies, all those kinds of things before that thing gets built. Inconvenience. There's always inconvenience when you're building next to somebody, and somebody's going to build there, whether it's 12 units or it's going to be 5, 6 single-family homes. They're going to, that property is going to be built on. It's not going to sit there and be, green space. So the request is the R3. As I said, it's a very small plan. It's not a big intrusive plan. That's the request that the developer made. He couldn't be here tonight. He's on the road and traveling on business, so you got me.
Well, the problem is not so much created by the developer as it is with our ordinances and our infrastructure. I mean, first of all, to do a PRD, you have to have 25 acres.
That's
Right,
right.
they got 21.
And
They
so,
can go buy 4 acres somewhere.
yeah, well, there you go. The other part about it is, in order to do the type of development you're talking about, it has to be zoned R3.
Right.
And everything on the other side of the road, including what this property surrounds, is already kind of single family.
R2. It's R2 across the street.
Well, but it's R3 right behind it. You have Franklin Town.
Right.
I understand that, but you know, nobody sees that. That's like
And they don't have to come across that bridge.
Franklin.
That bridge is a problem.
the bridge is going to have to be replaced in the next 3 to 5 years.
And the sewer lines.
And the sewer lines are going to
That's a problem.
They're going to get fixed under the consent order.
You know more about the sewer lines.
Yeah, and we know what we've studied enough there to know that there's a problem with the existing system, and we're studying ways to alleviate that. However, you still got the traffic issue that is horrendous in the afternoon.
For a short period of time.
Unless you're sitting there, which I have.
So have I, but it wasn't like you sat there for an hour. Like, you're not on the parkway. You're 4 or 5 cars making a turn.
I understand that. But again, the problem is with the R3 zoning, because under the R3 zoning, you could build 100 or more units up there once it's rezoned.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, you can't because of the topography.
Well, you could build an apartment building.
Well, I don't know where you'd put it, but I guess you could.
Well, if you can build 15 townhouses, I'm sure I could.
Certainly go up 3 stories and.
I could hire a good engineer like the one to my left, and he could figure out a way to do that.
Only 12. Only 12.
So, it's problematic.
Yeah.
And I don't.
It's not your plan or your idea that's the problem. It's what exists there now. The road, the bridge, the traffic, the sewer. That's just too many variables for me to think about changing the zoning to something that could be much more dense.
Well, you know, with 21 acres, you know, you need big lots, but most of the lot would be, you know, unusable. You're going to probably put in there 6 or 7 maybe single-family homes, and that's a permitted use.
That's true, and they have the right to do that.
Or you could build duplexes.
Build duplexes if you don't sell both ends. You need a condo. You'd have to do a condo then to do sell both units.
Not necessarily.
You don't have a side yard.
Yeah.
They have to do a condo. They could do that, but that really wasn't what they wanted to do. But
I understand. This still end up with about the same number of units.
they could, I guess. They could do that.
So, I don't know. That's Jane's given her thoughts on it. You can tell where I'm coming from.
I have an inkling where you're coming from.
I mean, I think I like the idea.
Sure.
I mean, I really do. I think we need that type of thing just in this area with what we heard last week and just knowing the traffic issues. I just think we're asking for trouble, in my opinion.
Well, again, like I said, they can still do things that has almost the same impact without much.
That's their property. That's their right. They can.
Yeah.
They can do. They absolutely can. But for me to change it to R3, there's too many infrastructure problems. That's just my opinion. like I said, the traffic, the road, the sewage, the bridge. It's just too many ways for something to go wrong for the people that already live there. That's just my opinion.
Why you guys make the big bucks?
Yeah, we make the big bucks.
Well, so everyone having said something, does anyone care to make a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we vote
To recommend?
to recommend.
Denial?
No,
Approval?
no, so I'm gonna ask for a vote, ask you, Mr. Chairman, for a vote for the rezoning of 21.76 acres on Logan's Ferry Road from R1 to R3.
Okay, we'll do it that way. All those in favor of approving this request, say aye. Those opposed, say no.
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 I abstain because of my conflict of interest.
Do you have a quorum?
Huh.
Do you have a quorum?
Yes, we do. He's
No, we
allowed to
don't.
abstain.
You need 4 votes.
Not according to Mr.
Not according to
Siddick.
Mr. Siddick.
Mr. Siddick doesn't know the home rule charter.
Home rule
Okay,
charter.
well, you can come back next month. I invite you to come back next month.
Not that I don't like seeing all of you every month, but
Okay, so we don't have a quorum.
So we can't.
Oh, you have a quorum. You just need 4 votes.
you want to put someone under the gun here.
All right.
That's really under the gun.
We have, well,
Glad you came.
on the advice of...
I could vote yes, and you guys still carry the vote. That way I keep him happy and...
You want to change your
To
vote?
go to work tomorrow?
Let's take another vote.
You need 4 votes, one way or the other.
Right.
You keep changing the rules.
No.
I don't know.
An abstention doesn't count.
Now,
So we have to table it.
that's the majority council.
All right.
Table it to August.
Somebody make a motion then to table this till August.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to table this.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anything else for the good of the cause?
You might want to advise your client.
Yeah, but I'm not. Why don't you close it and then we'll talk a little bit.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Morrison?
I make
No.
a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Well, he could